Donald Trump says he will probably debate Kamala Harris, but the vice president is taunting him over his refusal to commit to the previously agreed upon date of September 10th.
I do hope you'll reconsider to meet me on the debate stage. Because as the saying goes, if you got something to say,
let's bring in our political panel, Meghan Hayes and Maura Gillespie. Meghan served as special assistant to President Biden and White House director of message planning. Maura is a Republican strategist who served as an advisor to former Speaker John Boehner and Congressman Adam Kinzinger. Welcome to you both. Maura, I'll start with you. Former President Trump appears to be leaving his options open. Why is he taking that approach, and what do you think he'll end up doing at the end of the day?
He's going to have to debate her, and I know that's probably not what the Trump campaign wants to commit to right now, but because they need to get their strategy in place right now. Unfortunately, it's all over. They really had an opportunity to streamline their messaging to focus on policy issues that they have with the Kamala Harris ticket, but they have unfortunately decided to go the route of personal attacks. And so they need to clean that up before they even entertain the idea of having a debate. But a debate is important for the American people to truly assess the shakeup and what the election will be. We're only 4 months out, and it's important that people hear from the two people who are running for the top spot.
Yeah, I mean, Meghan, Maura's right. The fact that he is wavering on this debate and his campaign is wavering on a vice presidential debate as well kind of gives Kamala Harris a big opening to call him a scaredy cat.
Yes and no. I mean, I think that just like Maura was saying, they're trying to figure out what their messaging is. He's throwing everything at the wall. Nothing seems to be sticking. Right. But I do think, just to Maura's point, it is important for people to see Kamala Harris is a different candidate than Joe Biden. Her vision is going to be different for the next 4 years. It won't be vastly different, but it's important for these independent voters to really see the contrast between the two people. So I think that at the end of the day, they'll agree to it.
I imagine you saw at least part of Trump's appearance at the National Association of Black Journalists conference in Chicago. It was really striking. For some reason, he decided to question Kamala Harris's racial identity. He said that she just started calling herself black, even though this is someone who went to a historically black college when she was in her early 20s. She has always described herself as black and of Indian descent. What do you make of that appearance? Do you think it changes anything, particularly when it comes to black voters?
I think he's throwing everything at the wall. I think he's trying to see what sticks. This is coming off the heels of calling her husband a bad Jew yesterday. So this is just, he's making personal attacks. I don't think he knows what's going to stick in a policy perspective from him. I think he's trying to shore up his base because he knows that these independent voters are going to be much more difficult to get now that Joe Biden's age isn't the main topic of conversation. So I think that he is just trying to shore up his base. And I think that that's what his base wants him to hear, is this incendiary, like, divisive comments. So, I mean, it's disgusting and vulgar, but it's not surprising. This is the Donald Trump that we saw in 16 and in 20. He goes after the personal before the policy.
Maura, do you think that, this is a former president who doesn't take questions, frankly, from mainstream outlets very much anymore? He tends to go to some of his chosen right-wing outlets. Do you think he just got rattled by the kinds of questions he was getting asked and retreated to a message that's profoundly unhelpful when you're speaking to black journalists?
Trump tends to go on autopilot when he is flustered and or feels like he's lost track of what he was supposed to be saying in the first place. And we see that by he makes these similar comments he's always made. He does make inflammatory remarks and criticisms and just derogatory comments towards women especially. And I don't see how this plays well, given I'm getting loads of text messages today about Democrats, the progressives are out to take away Kamala Harris is the most anti-Catholic candidate ever to run for president, and things of that nature. And then on the flip side, you're espousing and derogatory comments that don't really fall in line with the Christian values that you're purporting to represent. I think that there is a real disconnect at the Trump campaign. They cannot, one, control the messenger, but don't have a sense of what the message should be. This is not helpful, especially as Meghan and you have talked about, the independent voters, the people who he needs to get on board. There's a small sliver of voters who both candidates really need to try and win over, because both so far have not done so. The Biden-Harris campaign administration and the Trump campaign have isolated this more moderate pool of voters.
I want to ask you both about Veep stakes because it does appear that Vice President Harris is nearing a decision about who her running mate will be. Maura, of the 5 individuals who we have named as the top tier that she's now choosing from, Tim Walz of Minnesota, Pete Buttigieg, the transportation secretary, Mark Kelly, the senator from Arizona, Josh Shapiro, the governor of Pennsylvania. Who do you think is the candidate that Republicans would least like to see on that ticket? Who are they most afraid of?
I would think Mark Kelly, because it could get that pool of voters that I was talking about, those moderates who are not, keen to vote for Donald Trump in any capacity, or his mini-me, J.D. Vance. But on the same token, they have not been impressed by the Biden-Harris administration. So somebody like a Mark Kelly could really bring in some of those moderate voters who, care about security and safety with his law enforcement family background. Arizona could potentially be a playable state for the Harris campaign with Mark Kelly on the ticket. I think, his service to our country as a NASA astronaut. There's a lot of things there that I think would be smart for Kamala Harris to look at, and would be a real problem for Republicans to pull some of these voters who are, the Nikki Haley voters, or people who just are not okay with the inflammatory comments towards women, especially.
What do you think? Do you agree with Maura that Mark Kelly is most advantageous for Kamala Harris when it comes to reaching out to moderate voters?
Yeah, I think all of them fit different criteria that would be helpful to the campaign. I think that the Trump campaign is probably scared of all of them because, again, they don't know where the message is going to land with the now candidate. So I just think, they're still trying to figure things out. So just adding another person to the mix is just going to make them even more chaotic and more chaos. And I think the most important thing here is to name a vice president that's not going to own a negative news cycle like his pick is doing. So I think anyone she picks will be a step above that. So I think that she'll be in good shape there.
I was really struck by the schedule for next week. The Harris campaign made it known that the vice president is going to travel all over the country, basically for the entire work week, with her pick when she announces, most likely him, but him or her, starting in Philadelphia, which definitely made everyone go, oh, Philadelphia. I know someone who's from Philadelphia. It's Josh Shapiro. But you don't usually see that. You don't usually see a presidential and vice presidential nominee travel together like that to so many events. Typically, they tend to divide and conquer.
Yeah, normally you do 1 or 2 events together, but I do think that she's going to take this opportunity to reintroduce herself to the American people and to these independent voters in these battleground states. I think that's incredibly important. She's no longer running as the second to Joe Biden, who everyone knew and had an opinion about. So I do think it's important to introduce them together. People are voting for them together. People also, I think, the VP pick is becoming more important for people, as you saw with Joe Biden's age. The Kamala Harris pick was extremely important. So I just think it's a good opportunity to reintroduce herself and reintroduce the country to the Democratic Party and the future of the Democratic Party. So I think it's incredible to get back into a normal campaign cycle with all these events and enthusiasm. I think it will be great for the party and great for their ticket.
Yeah, Maura, on the Republican side, President Trump has been asked repeatedly now about his pick, J.D. Vance. He said today, vice presidential nominees don't ever make a difference anyway, so it doesn't really matter. What are you hearing from others in the party about this choice?
Well, the reality is this does matter a lot. And I know we haven't given much focus to vice presidential picks in the past, but when it comes to, especially the Republican Party, right now, I don't think that J.D. Vance was chosen because of anything other than the fact that Trump really thought he had this in the bag. The unfortunate part for the Republican Party is looking forward, Trump can only serve, should he win, for 4 years. So J.D. Vance then becomes the top of the ticket, essentially, or would be, and his lack of fundraising ability thus far, he's only been in the Senate for a short while. He doesn't have a strong history of fundraising for his fellow senators in the GOP or House members. So it's going to be really hard for the Republican Party to then look at J.D. Vance as the future of the party. I'm a Republican, and I don't see how that's possible at this stage because some of his views are just so far away from what the Republicans in Congress and the conference are looking to achieve, and the distractions that are happening long term could be a real problem for us as a party.
Yeah, and he has had several opportunities to moderate some of those views. He's been asked about them several times, and he has declined to really do so. Meghan Hayes and Maura Gillespie, thanks to both of you for coming in.